Hey everybody, this is Matt at Hall Precision. I just wanted to give a quick and somewhat comprehensive overview of our single-cell enclosure system in case you're interested in knowing more. It is hard to write out a succinct description that includes all the features and the functions, so maybe a video will do a little better. Now I am going to try to do all this in one take, so forgive me if I have to restart a sentence or if I misspeak. I'm going to do my best to do it all in one take. So we're just going to go over all of the features. If you want to see the assembly video, how to actually put this together, we built this exact one right here in the shop, right about here, and that other video showcases it, so go check it out. All right, let's start looking at some of the features. So one of the most annoying aspects of enclosing the Pusa MK3 series of 3D printers is that they recommend detaching the power supply unit, which is this black box, and putting it outside of the enclosure so they can stay cool. It does have a maximum operating temperature. I forget what it is, but I did check about a year ago, and I would monitor the PSU temperature with a thermal thermometer, and it never exceeded the operating temperature, even through a 48-hour print in a non-air conditioned room. So I think it's safe to say that passive cooling through the PSU port there does work, and we've been running this same printer for almost 4 years in an enclosed configuration, and we've never had problems with it, no failures of any sort. So important to know, it does seem to work. We have tested it. We do get a lot of questions about that, a lot of doubt. We have upwards of 50 customers that run this enclosure that have not had any issues either. So long track record of success using the PSU ventilation. So the point of all that is to say you don't have to detach your PSU. You can leave it in the same exact spot, let it passively cool through this PSU vent, and that's it. So we also have a nice front door. This is using a magnetic latch that snaps into the profile extrusion here. This knob is threaded, so it's actually a two-piece assembly that threads in, and then we seat the little magnet and it just pops closed just like that. Very nice. We can also take this off. You'll notice that we have 3D printed hinges as well. These hinges are almost $15 a piece if you were to buy them off the shelf. 3D printed, they're far cheaper. Same goes with the corner connectors, the knob, and almost everything else on here. We've converted it all to 3D printable components to save you money. You can 3D print the parts yourself, or you can purchase a kit from us depending on how you're feeling. But this door just lifts right off. Just like that, the front door's off. You can just chuck it, whatever you want to do. Maybe not chuck it, but it gets out of the way pretty easily. You can pop this little latch off, and then the entire printer can come out through the front of the enclosure. Or alternatively, you can detach everything and pull the enclosure up off of the printer to access it. I prefer pulling the printer out of the front. We have a experimental spool holder here that actually works pretty well, but otherwise ignore that. This is a adjustable width spool holder, so these two pieces are independent and they can move all the way up and down the length of this profile extrusion. You want to keep them centered to this slot that you see here. This slot is what the filament passes through to get into the extruder. It's a very simple, straightforward way to do it. Some people are worried that it is not hermetically sealed, and it just hasn't been an issue. Generally speaking, if the air pressure inside of the enclosure isn't much different than the outside, there won't really be an exchange of air unless you physically move it with a fan or open the door or whatever. So it doesn't really need to be hermetically sealed, and also making it hermetically sealed is very difficult. So we're gonna leave it as is. Enough of that. We have a thermostat here. This thermostat has a probe that is inside behind our filter. You can see it back there. And the thermostat, which is an optional upgrade, controls the fan back there. Now, this gets kind of complicated, but I'm going to try to be succinct. There are really two different configurations or modes that you would run the fan in, and it depends on what kind of material you're running. PLA, PETG, and TPU don't really need to be in a heated enclosure. They don't have problems with warping and shrinking like ABS and nylon do. But ABS and nylon shrink a lot, and so you want to keep the environment as warm as possible. The parts are always going to be warm where they're attached to the build plate, right? But as you get up towards the top of the part, as being printed, it gets cooler and cooler and cooler. So these top layers are cooler than the bottom, and they'll shrink and they'll want to detach from the layers beneath them. So it's important to keep the chamber as warm as possible so that heat gradient is minimized. You don't want it to be too different from where it attaches to the build plate to the top. And yeah, as long as you can achieve that, shouldn't have any warping or splitting or lifting and that kind of thing. So the way that you would run the fan for a cool material is in the recirculation mode. Right now it is set, it would be in the exhaust mode. So right now it's set to the recirculation mode. So all I do is push this flap down, and now I can feel the air blowing through. So with PLA, PTG, TPU, we'd run it in that configuration, so it's constantly pulling fresh air into the enclosure and keeping it cool. If we're running a hot material like ABS, nylon polycarbonate, we would either set it to recirculate, or we would just turn the fan off altogether. Just like that. We would go ahead, preheat the 3D printer, and let it get the air nice and warm in the enclosure. Then we would start our print, and once the print is finished, especially when it comes to like air filtration, it's important to note that the part has to completely cool off before it will stop emitting organic gases. One mistake some people will make is they'll 3D print ABS, and as soon as the print is done, they crack open the enclosure and they smell all those organic gases, right? The reason why is because you have not given the filter adequate time to scrub the air of all those particles, and your part is still emitting volatile organic carbons, organic gases, ultrafine particles, whatever you want to call them. It's still going to emit those until it's completely cooled down. So you need to allow the part to completely cool down, turn the fan on full speed, and let it recirculate the air for about 30 minutes, and hopefully it will capture all of those particles in the activated carbon. So speaking of the activated carbon, the way that this comes apart, you simply twist that, it pulls out. This is cheap activated carbon sheet you can get on Amazon and cut to our specs. You just wrap it around this little canister and tuck the ends into one of the slots. We do identify which one. You can see more about this on our assembly video, but very easy to replace and should last anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on your use. But very easy to take on and off and service. We also have some LED strip lighting in here. This is optional. We don't include that because you might want colored, you might want flashing lights, who knows. Just make sure it's an adhesive backed LED strip light. We got one that's remote control, so we can turn this on and off with the press of a button, and it's been very nice. I don't think I missed anything else. I will say we went to great lengths to make sure that all of the parts that can be 3D printed are 3D printed to save you money. Again, you can purchase that kit from us, or you can 3D print it yourself. It only takes about 34 hours and half a spool of filament, like 0.5 kg of filament, to make all the parts needed from one enclosure. And the assembly time only takes about an hour, hour and a half. Could take more, but I'd say now that I've assembled a few of them, it'd probably take me about 30 minutes. But for the first timers, probably gonna take about an hour. But very easy kits to make. Very few parts compared to other enclosures. Like some other enclosures have, 2 and 3 screws per side here, and they just have hundreds of screws. We have 24. That's it. I can't remember the total part count for the enclosure, but I think it's below 100 pieces, even including all of these rubber gasket strips that you have to cut in place. So it's very few part count, easy to assemble, relatively cheap. Enclosures aren't cheap. That's the unfortunate part. It's like everybody wants their budget option. Your budget option is cardboard. If you want the next step up, you have to go with something like this. So this isn't necessarily a budget-friendly enclosure, but it is probably the most comprehensive enclosure on the market for the Pusa MK3S. If you disagree, I'd love to see your comments, and you can explain why and hopefully tell us how to improve in the future. But for now, we're pretty happy with how this turned out. It works really well for every material we throw in it, and it's very easy to use. It's one of those things where you buy it, assemble, install it, and you just don't think about it that much because it doesn't cause you problems. It just solves them. So if you're interested in checking this out, head over to our website and look at our shop. You'll find this with all the options. One note, if you do decide to purchase, be sure to tell us what kind of PSU type you have. If you want us to supply the 3D printed parts, there is a different PSU vent for the silver PSU, and we just need to make sure we send you the correct one. So anyways, thanks for watching. I think I almost got it all done in 10 minutes. Thanks for hanging with me, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.